Hi, I'm Alex Parrott, and I'm going to be reading The Warlord Speeds by Virginia Walton Pilegard, illustrated by Nicholas Debon. The Warlord Speeds. Many years ago in China, a boy named Xuan lived with his father in a palace of a powerful warlord. One day he realized his father was worried. How could that be? The sky was bright with sunlight. A songbird sat on the curve of the swooping roof of the warlord's palace. Xuan picked a soft, ripe peach from a tree in the palace garden. When he took a bite, sweet juice ran down his chin. Since they had come to live with the warlord, he and father always had enough to eat. The warlord trusted only father to sort and count his treasures. Maybe father was lonely from working all the time. When the warlord's 3 sons found Xuan wandering around the palace, they chased him with switches made from slender peach branches. Today, he decided, he must be brave. He crept through the palace. At last, he reached the door of the counting room. Father's eyes were squeezed shut. The corners of his mouth were turned down. Around him, elegant carved boxes overflowed with bead necklaces. Bronze coins, spices, and incense spilled out of leather bags. Jade statues of many sizes glowed white and pink and green. Xuan slipped over his father and touched the sleeve of his robe. Father's eyes opened wide with surprise. Every time he rides away, the warlord brings back more for me to count, he muttered. I am only a poor peasant. It is too much. Honorable father, Xuan said, the warlord gave you this job because he knows you are clever. The warlord says I am so clever that I have found a way to steal from him. Xuan could not believe what his father was saying. Yesterday I counted 120 carved boxes. The day before I counted 129. Today I counted 167 bags of incense. The day before 171. More came from the last journey and I have counted less. Father dropped his face into his hands. When I begin to count, a servant comes and I lose my place. The warlord's sons run like wild animals and I must start again. Could I help? Xuan asked. Father thought, you could hold up one finger each time I count 10 boxes. That would help me remember what I have counted. Xuan nodded eagerly. Father touched the precious boxes one by one, placing them into piles of 10. Xuan held up fingers first on one hand, then on the other. 80, 90, 100 boxes, and still there were more. Xuan looked at his outstretched fingers and wondered what to do next. Father, I've used all 10 fingers. Take off your shoes, Father said. Each toe can stand for 100. Then you can use your fingers to count more piles of 10. Xuan pulled off his shoes. He held up a toe. Now he had fingers enough to count more, but it was not going to be easy holding up one toe at a time. 110, one toe and one finger. A servant came with a tray of sweetmeats. Count well, peasant, or we will all be punished for your stupidity, he growled. Father did not look up. Xuan was afraid to even wiggle his toe. The servant left. Father ignored the tray. He looked at one toe and one finger Xuan held in the air. He looked at 5 boxes in the pile he had just started and nodded with satisfaction. 115. He began to count again. Xuan could almost taste the sweets. He wished the tray were closer. He thought about stretching his tongue. Just then, in ran the warlord's 3 sons. Xuan ducked his head, waiting for them to swat at him with their switches. They ran toward him, but the oldest noticed the tray of sweets. They dropped their switches, took handfuls of sweets, and ran out of the room. What was the last number? Father asked. Xuan looked at his hands and feet. He had lost track when the boys ran at him. Father sighed and started over. Xuan wished father had scolded him. He picked up one of the hateful switches the warlord's sons had dropped and threaded a large jade bead onto it. An idea began to form in his mind. If he put 10 beads on each switch, he could move one to the top each time father called out a number. It would be better than fingers and toes. Excited, he began to push beads onto the other 2 switches. A servant girl came in with a pot of tea and delicious-smelling dish of roasted duck and rice. The warlord will be home tomorrow, she stammered. She almost spilled the tea. If we stop to eat, we'll lose count, Father said in a weary voice. I know a way that we could stop, Xuan said. Before Father could say no, Xuan pointed to the 3 switches lying on the floor. Each switch had 10 beads. On the first switch, 1 bead was pushed all the way to the top. On the second switch, 3 beads were at the top. On the third switch, 1 bead was at the top. The first switch tells us we have one pile of 100 card boxes. The second one says we have 3 piles of 10, and the third one says we have one pile with just one box. Father smiled. 131, he said, and stopped to eat the roasted duck and rice. By nightfall, Father and Schwan finished counting all of the Warlord's treasures. They found more card boxes, jade statues, and bags of spices, coins, and incense than Father had ever counted before. The next morning, they counted again, just for good measure. When the Warlord returned, he was so pleased he told Father to keep all the precious beads that Schwan had used on his counting sticks. Present, the Warlord announced. I will see that your son becomes apprenticed to a fine teacher. Someday he will be an important man in China. You may have guessed that Schwan used beads and switches to make a counting frame, a forerunner of the abacus. Writings from China's Tang Dynasty, AD 618 to 906, tell of several kinds of counting frames. By the 14th century, the abacus had become the favorite calculator used all throughout Asia, where it is still used by some shopkeepers. You could make your own counting beads. Just take Fruit Loops or other colored cereal that's in the shape of O's and thread onto pipe cleaners. A cardboard frame may be traced from this page.